What's going on, everyone? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres with ScoopDuck on 3, coming to you live on a Wednesday, September 18th, 2024. Got a very special episode of the podcast in store for you guys today. So if you haven't already, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share wherever you find the Ducks Dish podcast. Joining me on today's episode of the podcast is legendary Oregon quarterback Akili Smith. Akili, how you doing? Great to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. This is real big for me and my family, and we appreciate you for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Well, I'm just glad to get a little bit of your time and talk some Ducks because we're in a bye week right now, but we're in September. It's football season, which means that we eat, sleep, and breathe it each and every day. So just how do you feel after the long off season, just having football back in the air, whether it's where you're at in San Diego or college, NFL, all of it?
It's the best time of the year. You know, you hit that time where the NBA season is over, and then baseball is, the only thing that's on TV, and everybody's waiting on football to show up, and then it finally happens, right? We get the Hall of Fame game, and everybody's like, "What? Football's already underway?" And yeah, we got the preseason Hall of Fame game to kind of kick things off, and everybody's tuned into that, and then we start to settle in to the best sport on the planet.
I would definitely agree with you that it is the best sport on the planet. I can't get enough of it. And it's just been great to be able to get out to some high school games down here in Southern California and just follow the Ducks, cover the Ducks. My Niners took an L last week, so that was a bit of a bummer. But life goes on. Life goes on. It's all good. But let's talk about the Ducks a little bit because Oregon is 3-0 and they are in their bye week right now. So let's just kind of get into what we've seen from the Ducks out of the gate so far. A little rocky start between Idaho and Boise State, but then week 3 comes around with Oregon State, and the Ducks looked a lot more like what we were expecting this offseason. So I'll just pitch to you, Akili. What do you think of the Ducks so far?
Well, what I think is we're going to get everybody's best shot pretty much every single weekend. And anytime you're playing a team like a Idaho in week 1, I guarantee you that the countdown is underway as far as they're doing extra reps.
Looks like we lost Akili for a second. I know he's on his phone, so he might have been getting a call or something like that. But the show goes on. The show goes on. You got me, Akili. There he is.
Somebody was calling, so I just had to send them the voicemail. But it's like this, right? Anytime you're playing a team like Idaho, they're going to put their best foot forward starting in the off season, right? So it's like it's an immediate countdown, getting ready to go into Autzen Stadium. We hear it's a tough place to play. They're probably blasting the music and doing all kind of stuff, and we got their best shot, And who knows? I don't know. I can't speak for the locker room. For me, knowing Dan Lanning, I don't think we overlook any opponent, but maybe there's some players on the team that possibly did because it was Idaho.
It was certainly a strange start to the year because a lot of people expected that one to be a blowout. I mean, I expected it to be 70-10, I think is the prediction that I put on paper. And you have to give credit where it's due to Idaho. They gave Oregon just about everything that they could handle in that game. And, if a couple things break a different way, maybe we're looking at a different result there. So what do you kind of make of, if I'm not saying I said this, but what do you make of people out there that kind of saw that game, saw the Boise State game, and were maybe thinking, is this a team that was reading their own press clippings a bit too much?
Well, I think there might have been, jumping the gun. You know what I mean? Like anytime you come out of the gate, we're playing at home. Boise State is traditionally a good program. That is a gritty, tough program. And to be honest with you, that's a Pac-12 program, if you will. And obviously, they've shown that over the years, even with Coach Peterson, who was the one that recruited me out here in San Diego. And they played some good football. They're strong in the trenches. They got a good run game. They're well coached, and they gave us everything that we can handle. And hopefully, those type of games show up for us in the Big Ten later on in the season, and we'll do the same thing that we did, and that's pull it out.
The Ducks were able to come together and pull out that win, and you get to this point in the season, Akili, and the Ducks are 3-0. maybe they haven't looked exactly like they wanted to, or certainly not like fans would have wanted them to through those 3 weeks. But the reality is you're 3-0, and that is all that matters at this point. You got to line up and play each game each week. Feels kind of weird getting a bye week in week 4 of the college football season. And that, of course, comes right after you play the Civil War rivalry, which we're used to seeing after Thanksgiving. So a little bit of a strange year from the schedule. But now that the Ducks get this bye week in week 4, just talk a little bit about kind of what your approach to a bye week was when you were at Oregon, and what your approach would be if you were the Ducks now.
Well, the biggest thing is to clean up any type of footwork, any type of situational football, anything that showed up in these 3 games. We got to put some emphasis on that to get ready for the Big Ten schedule. And typically, that's what we've done over the years. So I trust that Dan and Will and Tosh Lupoy and all the guys are going to be doing that. I trust that the coaches are going to be listening. Excuse me, the players are going to be listening to the coaches, trying to get those things cleaned up. And the next time that we see the Ducks, I expect for us to be 4-0.
I know there's reason to trust that the staff is going to be able to clean up some of those areas where they were maybe a little bit sloppy and some of those first games, just kind of tighten up. But for you, Akili, when you were playing your college football, just tell me a bit about what it's like to have this bye week, because sometimes they come at weird times in the season. Sometimes it's at the perfect time where your guys are banged up. They just need a little bit of rest, kind of get their wind back under their sails. Or sometimes there's also that discussion where it's like, hey, we were just, kicking some serious butt here, and now you're telling us we have to wait another week to play somebody. How do you kind of manage that approach with the momentum versus the recovery?
Yeah, me personally, I used to hate having bye weeks early in the season. Typically you want to have that bye week halfway through the season or the latter part of the season, especially after you've been doing some thumping and stuff like that early in the year. The other way that you can, possibly schedule a bye week is taking that Nick Saban approach. If you look at the way that Nick Saban scheduled over the years, he always had a lesser opponent the latter part of the year. Start get in there and play the first half, possibly through the third quarter, and then they would come out of the game. I'm not saying it's a bye, and no disrespect to some of those programs, but in his eyes, it's an opportunity to clean up some of those things, to play the rivalry game, and then get ready for that conference championship.
And speaking of the schedule, I think it makes sense and is favorable the way that Oregon did it for this year, right? Because you have what you thought was going to be a pretty easy win in Idaho, not an easy win, but you got to win. And then a quality Boise program that they always seem like they're a program that does more with less. If we're just talking about the caliber of talent that they're able to attract out there in Boise. And then you have your first road game of the year. Sure, it's only a 40 odd minute drive out to Corvallis, but that is a road game to start kind of getting your legs underneath you playing on the road against a rival. So I think that when you look at the way that the schedule is shaped out for Oregon, you're 3-0 and you got your first road win of the year under your belt. So I think you got to be happy with that.
Yeah, you always got to be happy with the win, and I think I've tweeted that out there. I put 2-0, I put 3-0, and different things like that. Because at the end of the day, I much rather have a difficult win than a difficult loss. So we're sitting at 3-0. I saw it this morning. I believe we're number 9, so we're within that 12, if you will, that needs to get into the college playoff, and then from there, it boils down to who we got to match up with and who we got to play. And the way that I'm looking at it, as long as we're getting better every single week, and I trust that the coaches and Dylan and all the guys are going to be doing that, we'll be right where we need to be when it's time to try to win a national championship.
It certainly feels like Oregon still has all the pieces to chase and go after that first national championship, but we'll get into that a little bit later on in our conversation today, Akili. Let's talk about the offense this year and kind of what we've seen from Will Stein and the Ducks so far. It was really a tale of 3 completely different games so far for this Oregon offense. So, well, what do you kind of make of what you've seen from the Ducks on offense so far?
Yeah, the physicality in the first 2 games definitely wasn't where we wanted it to be. I think he's already been sacked more than what Bo Nix was sacked all of last year. Some of that can be O-line play. Some of that can be, him understanding the reads, because we got to understand Bo was in his second season with the system, and now Dylan is in his first season in the system. So you have stuff like that that's definitely going to show up. But outside of that, we cleaned up the physicality. We were able to run the football, and then obviously that opens up, everything else. Defensively, we're going to get just better and better and better. We got some lockdown corners. Flo is definitely going to be a huge piece that's going to get back out there. Basa's got to get healthy, so that he can play more snaps and stuff like that. But outside of that, it's looking pretty good. And I cannot forget the special teams. That's the third phase of it. Special teams is playing well as well.
Special teams had some crazy highlights in that win over Boise State. I don't think Oregon gets that win, Akili, without the special teams. And you got to give a shout out to running back Jaden Lamar, who picked up the ball after Noah Whittington. Looks like he might have dropped it a little bit early there on that kickoff return. So 100% awareness there. And I'm sure that the staff is very happy he was able to grab that ball. You spoke a little bit about Gabriel and the sack numbers here through a couple of weeks, right? He's been sacked 7 times through 3 games. I think Bo was only sacked 5 times all of last year. So it only took the Ducks 2 games to match that mark from last year. Tell me a little bit about, I guess, just kind of dumb it down for people if you can, just the quarterback's role in avoiding sacks, because it's not just the O-line that has to block everybody. The quarterback's got to have that feel.
Yeah, it could be a few things. You got to come to the line of scrimmage. You got to check the protection. You got to slide it to the field, and they may be potentially showing some pressure to the field. And they may bring it from the boundary. So those guys get paid on defense as well. They do a good job of disguising. Who knows? They're doing a good job of rerouting at the second level, which is throwing the timing off. So the receivers got to do a good job of the second level release and then getting back vertical or whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of moving parts as far as being able to complete a forward pass. Like, a lot of people overlook the process of completing the forward pass, even when you're talking about just getting a snap. Okay, the snap has to be perfect. The drop has to be perfect. Is the left tackle setting back too far? Is the right tackle setting back too far? Are we getting some pressure in the A gap or the B gap? So I'm thankful that a lot of that stuff was able to get cleaned up against Oregon State. We got a veteran quarterback that can do a lot of different things. And I expect for the offense to just get better and better and better, and potentially look like it looked last year with Bo Nix at the helm.
We got a much better product from the offensive line in game 3 against the Oregon State Beavers. And I think a big reason for that was because the Ducks went with Poncho Lalaulu as their starting center and kept him there throughout the game. Not as much rotation as we saw in those first couple of weeks. We also saw Nishad Strother get inserted at left guard, and Marcus Harper II got slid over to right guard. And that feels like, as of right now, Oregon's best 5 from an offensive line standpoint, and the group that they're going to trot out there, we expect against UCLA, but we have to see what happens with Bedford, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. One thing I was curious to pick your brain about, Akili, how would you kind of manage an offensive line that is struggling? Like, if you were in Dylan Gabriel's situation, the first 2 weeks where it just felt like it was hard for them to get into a rhythm. I don't know if it was a communication thing, the physicality wasn't there, like you said. How would you talk to your guys and try to rally the troops?
Well, the biggest thing is just keeping them confident, right? We can't have them reading press clippings. We can't have them paying attention to what's being said on Twitter. And then most importantly, you got to get on the same page with the coaching staff and figure out exactly what the coaches want from me as a quarterback out there on the football field, so we can go out there and execute. And then the final thing is, Will knows this, and all of the top coordinators across the country know this. You got to be able to keep that defense off balance. We're talking about quick game. We're talking about drop back. We're talking about tunnel screens. We're talking about play action. We're talking about dash pass, right? We're dropping back and then we're sprinting and throwing the concept. So when you're able to do stuff like that to keep the defense off balance, and you're changing the quarterback's launch point, it makes it a lot easier for the quarterback and for the offense to have some success.
Confidence is such a key part of all of this, Akili, because you got to have that confidence, not only as a quarterback, but certainly as an offensive line. And I think that the Ducks have really tried to keep that as they have navigated some of those hiccups, some of those bumps in the road out of the gate here to start the 2024 season. And you know what I'm confident in? I'm confident that you are going to love the food that you get at Ranchito Grill in Springfield. Going to give a quick shout out to one of our sponsors here on the show, and that is Ranchito Grill in Springfield. Not sure what your dinner plans are tonight, but head on over to Ranchito at 1537 Mohawk Boulevard. Try their homemade tortillas. They got great food, a great environment, and they will take care of you. Say what's up to my guy, Ruben, and let him know that Max Torres sent you. Talking with former Oregon quarterback Akili Smith here on a Wednesday. I'm your host, Max Torres, with ScoopDuck on 3. Glad to have you guys along for today's episode of the podcast. Do me a quick favor, hit that like button and subscribe to the ScoopDuck on 3 YouTube channel. Maybe you take it a step further and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our future live streams or future episodes of the Ducks Dish podcast. But we are super glad to have you along for today's episode here on a Wednesday. And Ruben was actually here in the chat and he asked us a question. He wrote smiling, but I'm assuming he said, Akili, what do you think about this coaching staff? Can they, we got some typos here. Can they, the Ducks, in post to make a championship run? Thank you. So he's just asking basically your thoughts on this coaching staff and if you think the Ducks can make a championship run. That's what I'm taking from it.
Yeah, you were kind of break a little bit, but you're just talking about the coaching staff. I don't have no issues with the coaching staff at all. The times that I've been up there and sat in meetings, the preparation is just, it's incredible, especially when we're talking about situational football. I mean, we sat in the big room and went over situational football. Then we went to the offensive classroom and talked about situational football. Then we went to the quarterback classroom and talked about situational football. So they do a good job.
All right. It looks like we lost Akili there for just a second. I know he's on his phone. Hopefully it didn't die, but we are rolling nonetheless. I'm going to see if I can get him back here in just a second. Apologies for that, folks. But this is what happens when you do things live. You just got to roll with it. But I think the question definitely becomes, and hopefully we'll be able to get Akili back here and ask him. But here he is. We got him back here on the show. Akili Smith is back.
I had to get up and move. I'm at a park. I tried to get at a park where everything would be perfectly fine. So I'm getting up and moving from that table now. It's not working.
Okay, it seems like it's a lot more crisp now, your connection, which is awesome.
Okay.
But maybe the second part of this question is where we could kind of pick back up here. Do you think that the Ducks can make a championship run? And if so, why?
There's no doubt about it. And obviously lose current big conference champion and still get in. Lose 2 games and still get in. So it's very favorable for us, and I expect us wholeheartedly to win as well. And we have all the pieces to get. We have receivers, we got corners. The safety position is playing very well. So everything is there for us to make a serious national championship push.
All right, it was pretty choppy for part of that answer, Akili. I'll be honest with you. But I think we got you back a little bit better now. I'm hoping. So we'll keep rolling with it. You were talking about how there's a margin for error with the expanded playoffs, so you can kind of afford to have a couple of games maybe not break your way, and then they have all the pieces there with especially some of the guys that they got in the transfer portal. And maybe that would be a cool question to ask you, is just your thoughts on how Oregon has managed the transfer portal, because it's so crucial in today's day and age to find that balance between the portal and, of course, high school recruits.
Right. And even with the transfer portal, because of the monetary, system and NIL and stuff like that, it's almost like you can't miss. It's like free agency, if you will. Right. A lot of times, colleges and NFL, they bring in these top free agents. The free agents get signed. And, the first few games, you want to play your free agents and pretty much show everybody that you didn't make a mistake, and right now we're looking pretty good with our, in this current format with our free agents are doing well on the football field.
Who have been some of the ones that have kind of caught your attention?
The biggest one has been Dylan. I always start with the quarterback position. I know people wanted more and expected more out of him. His numbers, as far I think it was like 41 or 48 or something like that. I mean, to throw that many passes, to have that many completions, even if they're speed and space type throws, that's still a good completion percentage. And then I like what our corners are doing out there as well. So I'm just excited about everything that's going on moving forward.
I've been super excited about what we've seen from the defensive backs early on, especially Brandon Johnson, who comes over from Duke. Jabbar Muhammad has been his usual self. So those are definitely two of the early standouts. But before we wrap up the show, Akili, I got to ask you for a little bit more on your thoughts with Dillon Gabriel and what he's been able to do, because he's done a really good job taking care of the ball. And I don't think he's done anything like miraculous necessarily. He's had some pretty darn good throws at times. But yeah, just give me some of your thoughts on what we've seen from Gabriel.
Yeah, he's the ultimate game manager right now, and he hasn't been asked to do a lot. You know, he did miss some throws. I believe it was on a corner route on the left side, if I'm not mistaken. But outside of that, he's been managing the game. He's doing a good job of executing Will Stein's offense, and I pretty much expect this to happen for the rest of the year. You know, we got guys out there that will be in trouble trying to cover our guys one-on-one, and we got a quarterback that if the pocket is clean, he will throw a catchable and accurate pass. So I'm okay with what I'm seeing out of Dillon right now.
And I think that's really all you need Gabriel to do. I think that when people hear something along the lines of game manager, they automatically take it as an insult. But it's like that's definitely not the case. Like it's a luxury for Oregon to be in a position where, if we're just getting down to the basics of it, all they really need Gabriel to do is take care of the ball and get it to the playmakers. That's really what you need to do, because this is a seriously talented collection of skill players that they have in Eugene.
Right. And when you say game manager, because Cam Newton took some heat when he said that as well. A game manager is when, a coach calls double post, we get quarters, and he throws the post to the number one receiver and completes it for a touchdown. You're managing the game. The coaches said, okay, when it's 2nd and 8 on the right hash, they like to play quarters. Okay, well, let's dial it up. Let's call double post when it's 2nd and 8. That's managing the game, and we hit it. So I think a lot of people, they read that wrong and think that I'm just out there not trying to lose the game. No, you want to be a game manager. And then there will be times where you got to step up in the pocket and escape and throw some awkward throws, and some say off-platform throws. But for the most part, you have to be a game manager and trust all three phases of the game.
And then just a couple more for you, Akili, while I have you on here. Obviously, a lot of people have their attention a little bit down the line here when it comes to Oregon and the 2024 season. They've got that October 12th date circled on their calendar, as the Ducks will welcome the Ohio State Buckeyes to Autzen Stadium, the first time the two teams have played each other since 2021. How are you feeling about that Oregon versus Ohio State matchup, particularly in comparison to how you felt about it before the season started?
Yeah, that is a huge game. We've already got our tickets. We've already got our airline tickets. We are set and ready to go. It's going to be a phenomenal scene. I know they have some revenge in the air when, Cristobal and Anthony Brown let us in there to go get that win. I'm super excited. In my opinion, I think that these are the top two teams in the Big Ten locking up in Autzen. Thank God that we got the opportunity to play at home first, and then we got to get ready to go to the big house. But I expect us to play some gritty football and win that game as well.
I think they still stack up well, but my biggest question is how they're going to do in the trenches for this game. I think that was the offensive line in Columbus was a question around the Buckeyes last year. And I think through 3 games, you still have to say it's somewhat of a question for Oregon. I think you kind of got to take things week by week. You had a good performance against Oregon State. Are you going to be able to repeat that kind of performance against UCLA on the road when Michigan State comes to town? So I think that those are kind of my big questions right now as it pertains to that matchup. How does Oregon stack up in the trenches, and how does Ohio State look?
No question. And on paper, I think everybody was looking at that before the season started. On paper, we definitely have the ability to do it. Thank God, we do have the bye week this early to where we can get some stuff cleaned up. And then I expect for us to look like a powerhouse when we come out for game 4.
Can't let you leave the show without asking about your son. Akili Smith Jr. also goes by KJ, playing his senior year over there in San Diego with the Lincoln Hornets. Just how have things been going for him, and just what's the latest with KJ?
Right now we're 2-2. We played against a tough J Sarah team that, we do a couple things different offensively as far as, completing some passes. KJ has some throws that he should have hit. I try not to be too tough on my son now because some people say I'm that way. So I'm giving him a little bit more leadway right now. But he did have some plays that he could have made to help us win that game. But outside of that, when we got teams in San Diego that flat out will not play us, it makes it extremely difficult when you're talking about a Title I team, right? We're inner city school. Our resources aren't where it needs to be. So now we got to get ready to go to Grant. We got to play teams like J Sarah. We got to play Arborview, and it makes it extremely difficult on us. But to see our kids compete against the likes of teams like this is just phenomenal. And we're hoping that after these 6 out of San Diego games are over and we get ready for the San Diego schedule, if you will, it will prepare us for an opportunity to win a CIF championship.
Yeah, it always helps to play teams from outside your region because it'll give you looks that you don't normally see. You'll go against different calibers of players sometimes. So I think it's all good stuff that'll help a team grow throughout the year. Anything else that you kind of wanted to just bring up or mention here while you're on the show, Akili, whether it's Ducks, college, high school, just anything before I let you go?
No, not really, man. Just thank you for having me on there, on the show. Oregon has a bye. Lincoln has a bye. So obviously we'll get some stuff cleaned up as far as Lincoln is concerned before we head on up to Grant. Grant is a nice program, good, strong program in the Sacramento area, which is going to be another good test. But I fully expect for everybody at the Lincoln High School, for the Lincoln High School program to be ready to play. And I expect us to go out there and put on a good show. And then we'll come back for Los Alamitos. And then that will finalize the 6 games outside of San Diego.
There you go. Right on. And then just kind of a fun Oregon connection. Grant High School is actually where true freshman Oregon safety Kingston Lopa played his high school football. So always looking for the Duck and recruiting connection there. I am. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up for us here on the show, you guys. If you want to find more of me, you can find me on any social media platform at mtorres sports. Subscribe to the ScoopDuck On3 YouTube channel and come and see us at scoopduck.com for the very best in Oregon football and recruiting coverage. And share the show, share the Ducks Dish podcast with your friends, with your family, and with other Duck fans. But until next time, thank you to Akili for stopping by and giving us some of his time to talk football. And thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast.